I just wanted a good night's sleep. But then Karen turned my bedroom into a rave party with a giant spotlight shining straight into my house. Have you ever felt like you were being harassed for no reason? Let me tell you an unbelievable story about how a self-proclaimed neighbor became a late-night nightmare. If you were the main character in this story, what would you do if you were treated this way? Feel free to share your story in the comments below. That night, the neighborhood I live in seemed quieter than ever. It was a warm summer night, with not a cloud in the sky, and the dim moonlight shone down on the sidewalk like a gentle carpet. Everything around me felt peaceful, with the faint glow of lights from the houses still on. But there was no noise, nothing to disrupt the calm. All the families in the neighborhood had fallen asleep, enjoying a quiet and peaceful night. I wasn't an exception. After a long day at work, I just wanted to lie down and relax. But no one could have guessed that my sleep would be disrupted in such an unbelievable way. In an instant, the peace was torn apart as a powerful laser light shone directly into my room from the neighbor's house. Late at night, I lay in my dark room, my eyes heavy from the long day. I often wake up in the middle of the night, but tonight, I was hoping to sleep soundly and enjoy the calm that summer brings. But suddenly, a bright light from my window made me jolt awake. At first, it was just a slight flicker, and I thought it was a passing car's headlights. But then the light grew stronger and stronger, shining directly into my room like a searchlight. I looked out the window and saw something unbelievable. The light was coming from my neighbor's house. They had installed a high-powered laser system, shining straight into my bedroom. The discomfort immediately overwhelmed me, as if the entire space around me was being invaded by this unreasonable light. I tried to pull the curtains down, but the light still pierced through the small gaps, preventing me from resting. Late at night, while everything else should have been a peaceful sleep, I had to face an absurd light battle coming from my very own peaceful neighborhood. Every beam of light felt like an arrow straight into my head, making it impossible to stop thinking about this strange situation. For me, this was an incomprehensible situation. I am a rather gentle person, living quietly and avoiding conflicts. My whole life, I've just wanted to live in a peaceful community where people respect each other and don't disturb one another. But since Karen, my strong-willed and power-hungry neighbor, appeared, I gradually realized that not everything I wanted could be easily achieved. Karen always saw herself as the queen of the neighborhood. She assumed she had the power to control everything, from unofficial rules to decisions that affected the lives of others. And now, she had crossed the line by deciding to shine a laser light into my bedroom, creating an unwanted rave party scene. I couldn't understand her motivation, but I knew this wasn't the first time she had done something to control the lives of those around her. Tonight, I never expected that, after months of living peacefully, something so foreign would invade my private space. And I had no idea what to do because all I wanted was a quiet night without facing the irrational actions of someone else. However, this situation clearly couldn't continue. I realized that I would have to do something, or else Karen would keep pushing further, controlling everything in this neighborhood. Things started to change when Karen, the neighbor living next door, began interfering with my life. She always had this feeling that she was the center of the neighborhood, and no one could override the rules she set for herself. In reality, I always avoided conflicts, but this time, Karen had gone too far, and I couldn't just watch her keep disturbing me like this. Karen is a middle-aged woman, with a tough appearance and always assuming she has power in the neighborhood. She constantly orders people around, from unofficial rules to important decisions in the neighborhood, even organizing meetings without invitation. What frustrated me the most was that Karen always believed she had the right to control and decide everything around her. She has a bizarre superstition about bad energy. She believes that the neighborhood is affected by bad energy that only she can see and deal with. And of course, she believes that she is the spiritual protector of the neighborhood. To ward off what she considers negative energy, Karen took a ridiculous action. She installed a high-powered laser system, shining it straight into my bedroom at night, making it impossible for me to have a peaceful sleep. I heard from our neighbor Hannah that Karen is obsessed with spiritual beliefs or superstitions. She truly believes that by shining a strong laser light into someone else's house, she can ward off bad energy that only she can perceive. She believes that if she doesn't do this, the neighborhood will be dominated by invisible monsters and everything will go into chaos. Karen not only sees herself as the neighborhood's protector, but also thinks of her actions as a noble mission. She believes that doing this is the only way to keep the community safe from what she thinks are dangers. But the problem is, Karen's actions not only caused inconvenience, but also completely lacked any scientific basis or solid reasoning. It was an imposition on my life without anyone's consent or approval. The exhaustion and stress she caused me had pushed me beyond the limits of a person who just wants a peaceful life. Thus, Karen's actions had turned a peaceful neighborhood into a battleground, where she placed herself above everything, disregarding the comfort and privacy of those around her. When I just wanted to enjoy a comfortable sleep after a long workday, an unbelievable thing happened. Suddenly, a powerful light shone into my room. At first, I thought it was a passing car's headlights, but when I looked outside, I saw a constantly flashing light coming from Karen's house. It wasn't street lights or car headlights, but a blinding laser light shining straight into my bedroom. I got up, confused, and looked toward her house. Her window was brightly lit like a light show at a nightclub, except there was no music, only unbearable discomfort. Karen, someone I've never had any conflict with, was using a high-powered laser to shine straight into my house. What's going on? Is this some weird prank, or is she really doing this for some reason? I didn't know, but that night, I couldn't sleep. And that was just the beginning. On the first night, I just thought it was a minor issue. Maybe Karen was doing something odd or accidentally shining the light outside. But when this continued for several nights, I began to realize this was no accident. The light wasn't just a random beam. It lasted through the night, flashing and shining into my room, causing extreme discomfort. My eyes were aching, and my head was spinning because I couldn't sleep. Day after day, I tried to endure, but I couldn't. I started feeling exhausted, stressed from the lack of sleep. Each night felt like an uninvited rave party I was dragged into. My mood sank, and I couldn't understand why a neighbor would disturb me like this. It wasn't just the light. The frustration was slowly building up inside me. I tried to close the window, draw the curtains, but the light still seeped through the small cracks, making it impossible to escape this nuisance. Exhausted and frustrated, I started wondering if Karen had some ulterior motive behind this behavior. I wanted to confront her, but I still hesitated. How could someone like Karen act this way? She wasn't the type of person to do such irrational things, or so I thought. But this situation couldn't continue. The whole neighborhood gradually realized the injustice I was facing. At first, only I was affected, but as this situation dragged on, my neighbors started to notice. I caught some of them talking about the strange light coming from Karen's house, but no one dared to speak up or do anything about it. Some neighbors started complaining about the absurdity of it all, but they didn't know what to do either. When I told a few friends about my situation, they couldn't believe Karen was doing this. Isn't Karen the one who participates in HOA meetings? Why is she doing this to you? One friend said. Everyone felt the injustice for me. Karen's foolishness was becoming clearer and harder to explain. But I realized I couldn't just keep enduring this anymore. It was time for me to take action. After many sleepless nights, when my body was almost worn out and my mind was starting to unravel, I knew I couldn't keep tolerating this irrational behavior any longer. I felt like I was being trapped in my own home. That laser light, shining into my room every night, not only destroyed my sleep, but also made me lose the peace I always longed for. So, I decided to strike back. I didn't want to create a major conflict, but I couldn't let Karen keep harassing me like this. After researching thoroughly, I decided to install a similar light system at Karen's house. I carefully planned it so the light would shine right into her room, just as she had done to me. I wanted her to feel what she had caused me and show that her actions were not only disturbing, but could also backfire. The lighting system I set up was a perfect reflection of what I had been enduring all this time. From then on, I just waited for the night, eager to see Karen's reaction when the powerful light shone into her room. The next night, I sat in my room as the light from my system slowly began to shine into Karen's house. I was sure she would realize it right away. I didn't expect her reaction to come so quickly. Just a few minutes later, I started hearing noise from outside. Karen's window was wide open, and I could see her fumbling around, pulling the curtains open and then closing them again. The light from my system pierced through the window, shining directly into her bedroom like a blinding flash, just like the one I had to endure. Karen began to feel uncomfortable. She walked back and forth in her room, trying to find a way to avoid the light. I watched from the window and couldn't help but laugh. She was panicking, just like I had on those previous nights. That feeling, finally, I got my sweet revenge. What she had done to me was now coming back to haunt her. The neighbors around us, who had previously only dared to whisper about Karen's strange actions, were now witnessing this scene. Some of them stood in their yards, peering over at Karen's house, and they too couldn't hold back their laughter. I'm sure they didn't expect someone as mild-mannered as me to turn the tables like this. One neighbor walked up to me, patted me on the back, and laughed out loud. "I can't believe it, Daniel. Finally, Karen is getting a taste of what she brought to you." The entire neighborhood seemed to be enjoying the sight of Karen having to endure what she had imposed on others. For the first time in a long while, the people around me were laughing and empathizing with me. That was the most rewarding moment I'd ever had. Karen was beginning to feel the discomfort she had caused me. She stood by her window, staring at the blinding lights, visibly frustrated and unable to do anything. Meanwhile, my neighbors began to gather, unable to stop laughing at this humorous situation. She felt completely powerless, and now everyone in the neighborhood was beginning to witness her failure. At that moment, I could clearly feel that the community was on my side, and people were starting to realize that Karen's actions not only caused trouble, but also backfired. At this point, Karen, her face red with anger, couldn't do anything. The community was laughing happily, as if an invisible force had helped me stand my ground. My retaliation not only solved my problem, but also forced Karen to face the chaos she had caused for those around her. At that moment, I witnessed a truly special scene. I sat with others, chatting happily, sipping a cold drink, and laughing. Meanwhile, Karen stood at her window, staring outside with an angry look, but didn't dare step out. She couldn't do anything as the community no longer supported her. All the self-appointed power she once thought she had now completely faded. Karen was completely isolated. She was no longer the queen of the neighborhood. Everyone had realized that she had no authority when acting on irrationality and arrogance. The community no longer let her freely give orders or control, and that made me feel triumphant. Finally, Karen had gotten exactly what she deserved. Karen could only watch from a distance, too afraid to step closer and join in the activities with everyone. She had pushed herself out, isolated in the very neighborhood she once thought she controlled. Now, no one in the neighborhood feared or endured her any longer. And I, the main character in this story, witnessed the consequences of a woman who once considered herself a ruler with no limits. When I saw Karen endure the feeling of isolation and losing all power, I couldn't help but feel satisfied. The community, once fearful of Karen's impositions, could now live freely and joyfully without her control. I saw the looks on everyone's faces, the comfortable smiles, and that feeling was truly amazing. The neighbors around, who had once been silent, began to recognize the absurdity of Karen's actions. Slowly, they began to turn their backs on her. Perhaps Karen had once had significant influence over everyone in the neighborhood due to her control, but now they no longer hesitated to oppose her. They no longer wanted to be pressured by her unreasonable decisions. The community began to feel more free, no longer afraid or controlled by Karen. The laughter and joy from the neighborhood made me feel truly fulfilled. The feeling of isolation overwhelmed Karen. She stood at her window, looking outside, seeing everyone enjoy themselves without her. Her eyes were full of anger and disappointment, but she couldn't do anything. No one wanted to listen to her commands or criticisms anymore. Karen had lost the power she once claimed, and now she was the one isolated in the very neighborhood she had once ruled. She didn't just lose the respect of the community. She couldn't step out of the shell she had created for herself. The neighbors she had once ordered around now stood up against her, leaving her completely abandoned. There was no one to help her, no one to ally with her. Everyone in the neighborhood started laughing, sharing funny stories about how Karen had controlled them all this time. But now, they could live freely without worrying about being bothered by her. Seeing Karen face the consequences of her own actions made me feel triumphant. After all those sleepless nights, I did what I didn't think I could. I turned the tables and made Karen realize the absurdity of her actions. Karen lost. Not only did she lose her power, but she was also completely isolated. Just as I had thought, her actions were just a stick she made to beat herself with. And now, it was me who had turned the tables, and I didn't regret it. After all the tension, I could finally return to the peaceful sleep I deserved. The laser light no longer bothered me. I lay in bed, sighing in relief, feeling like all the burdens had been lifted. That night, I had a deep sleep, something I hadn't had in so many nights. Meanwhile, Karen was facing the consequences she never expected. The community and the neighborhood started turning their backs on her. Those who might have once been afraid or turned a blind eye to Karen's actions now realize she wasn't just an overbearing control freak, but also a selfish person who thought she had the right to disturb others without considering their feelings. She lost the respect she once had, and now only isolation and failure remained. Through everything that had happened, I learned a valuable lesson. Silence isn't always golden. Sometimes, you have to stand up and fight smartly to protect your rights and your peace of mind. I couldn't just keep tolerating Karen's irrational actions without reacting. This not only helped me maintain my personal rights, but also showed that sometimes, resistance is the only way to restore justice. I feel proud that I didn't let Karen overpower me. My actions didn't just help me reclaim my sleep, but also sparked a change in the community, a change I didn't expect. Now, I know I can protect myself without fearing that someone will control my life. After everything, Karen realized that her controlling actions and self-appointed power not only embarrassed her, but also caused her to lose all respect from those around her. Instead of being the protector, she became the one who was isolated. No one wanted to listen to her commands. No one feared her anymore. She didn't learn any important lessons from her actions, but only felt angry and frustrated as she watched the community bond without her. Karen no longer had the power she once did. All the impositions she had made on others had come back to make her an outsider, standing apart from everything in the neighborhood. That was the price you pay when you abuse power and control others. The light from the laser finally faded, returning peace to the neighborhood. But strangely, even though the light was gone, Karen's shadow still lingered in the neighborhood. It wasn't a real shadow, but the absence of her, the isolation she had to endure. The whole community was now more united, no longer controlled or imposed upon by people like Karen. The residents were living happily, freely, without being forced by anyone. Karen had created her own isolation, and I couldn't help but feel satisfied as I watched her come to realize the truth. Karen, if you need a light show next time, make sure to invite me. I smiled thinking about this, feeling like I had won not just in the battle of lights, but also in protecting my own freedom. Who do you think was right in this situation? Have you ever experienced something similar? Share it below. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the Crazy Neighbor Drama channel to continue following the epic turnarounds.